Yep, my name's Michael Bird, and my book is called The Gospel of the Lord, How the Early Church Wrote the Story of Jesus. And you can tell by my accent, I'm Australian. I'm a biblical theologian.
What is the Gospel of the Lord?
The Gospel of the Lord is the good news about the Lord Jesus, about his life, his death, his resurrection, how it brings Israel's story to a climax and launches something new. It launches a renewed Israel, a renewed people of God, through whom God's plan to repossess the world from himself will come to fruition. And these are stories that invite us to believe, to obey, and to be in awe of Jesus the Messiah.
And tell us a little bit about how your book explores this.
Okay, on the one hand, Jesus starts preaching in Galilee the gospel of the kingdom, about 30 AD or thereabouts. Sometime in 180 AD or thereabouts, roughly 150 years later, there's a guy called Eerdmans says, there are 4 gospels. My question is, how do we get from A to B? How do we get from Jesus, from Nazareth, preaching the gospel of the kingdom, or wherever it was in Aramaic, to Eerdmans arguing there can be no more and no less than 4 gospels for the church?
Would you read the 4 Gospels as independent works of literature, or do you believe that they were always supposed to be taken together as a fourfold gospel?
Yes, I think the answer is yes to both questions. On the one hand, each of the Gospels is a literary, narrative, and theological work in its own right, and can be studied on its own. On the other hand, the fourfold Gospel, the Tetraevangelium, is a distinct literary unit, a distinct canonical unit. I think it's quite providential that the canon is ordered the way that it is. And in the providence of God, you've got to read 4 Gospels and an account of the beginnings of the church before you get to Paul, before you get to Hebrews, before you get to Revelation. So I think the shape of our canon with our fourfold repetition of the story of Jesus goes to show that we have a real Jesus-centered faith.
Who are you hoping to reach? Who's your audience in this book?
Well, I hope I reach anyone who's interested in the Gospels. I mean, why do we have the Gospels? How did we get them? And why are they what they are? How did the Gospels originate, and why did they take on the shape and characteristics that they did? Now, obviously, I think a book like this will be of interest to seminary students, people who are beginning to wrestle, perhaps for the first time, with the question of how we got the Gospels. And I think this book would also be good for anyone who's interested in the questions of history and sources relating to the Gospels.